Okay, so I know I've been sort of quiet in social media and stuff because I've been a bit busy. Oh, yeah. So I completely remodeled Electra and redesigned it too. This is not done. I'm in the almost final stages, but I've actually been recording all of the process. Well, not all of it, just like the beginning of, you know, it's actually quite a lot of time in terms of work. So it's either I make a 10-hour YouTube video or, like a 1 hour one where we go over you kind of get an idea of my process and the rest is more of a repetition. But so the steps though is first, we go from my previous sort of completed Electra. This one. And I knew I wanted to basically move all the volumes around, so I had to get it back into hard edges. Oh, whoops, wrong one. Hold on. Don't look. Everyone close your eyes. Hold on. Everyone close your eyes. Okay. So I got the model back to hard edges, and ooh, see here you can see all the difference between the new model and the old Electra. I gave it more distance on the sides, and I moved the front. But I'll have another video once I finish Electra of all the differences. So anyways, I got it into hard edges, and then basically from this point to this point, I recorded for the front end, I recorded how I did that, how I moved my surfaces around, and I'm gonna speed up the workflow to 4 times, just because it's fairly long video, and I'll slow down some areas where I think there might be some need of me explaining things further, and then I'll do some little side videos that show the tools, just to sort of because I know this is very much more of an advanced video, but I'll still try to add in bits and pieces for those that are still very much early in their beginning of the learning process, and try to sort of show you guys where these tools are, talk a little bit about my process. But yeah, so this is actually the first time I showcase the new Electra, but I wanted to sort of already release these videos before I really finish it, because the build is still fresh in my head, and yeah, so we'll just get to it. Okay, so now I know what you guys are thinking. Ray, there's no way you're gonna talk for an hour about this, and actually you must not know me very well, because I could talk forever, and this is gonna be a very long hour with me. So everyone get comfortable, get ready to learn some shit, and yeah. So first and foremost, I want to say that I do not believe I am the best modeler ever in the world. There's definitely millions of different ways to approach modeling. Some I would say there's some ways that are much better than me in different aspects. But this is just my workflow, and very much on what I like to do when I model and when I design. And some of the stats here, this is about an hour and a half of footage, but sped up. So we're seeing about 4, well, an hour and a half times 4 is 6. So we're seeing 6 hours of work here. Another thing too is, remember, I am the designer and the modeler, so this is a lot quicker than traditional design workflows. A lot all these in a design studio, all exterior, it'll take you a month, 2 months, of just refinement. So this to me is very much like design modeling, and so it's not exactly what I would call perfect. But that for me, perfection is class A. So, which I've done in my career. So, but I don't want to spend a month perfecting a door panel. That's not my job. And also in these design studios, that's not what I do. I my job is basically to try to make the best design that and model something that represents the design that they're intended. And usually it's gonna either get milled out or for rendering. So even though my style is very Class A oriented, I wouldn't say that it is Class A at all. Just because you really, if when I'm working in Class A, it's hyper um, modeling where you're moving things and making sure everything's perfect. And for this, you don't really. It's more of a focus on volumes and design lines and a lot of movement everywhere. That's very much the workflow inside a design studio. So after I started adding once I found the right opening that I liked, I wanted to project that curve onto my guide surface, and this is what I'm doing right now. And once I project that guide curve, I don't need the middle circle curves that I made for in the beginning, so I just delete them. And then what I want to do is actually skin them, and this is a fairly a common problem that you see in Alias. Basically, what happens is when you extend a curve with multiple spans, if you try to skin those two curves, for some reason, Alias will give you this surface with a bunch of spans everywhere, and I don't want that. So a way to sort of go around this issue is I'll get any one of those curves, duplicate it and skin it, and then with itself, and then that way that will give me a nice and clean surface, well, semi-clean surface, and then I'll use that new surface and align it to the other curve. And this sort of is just a quick way to sort of give me a cleaner wheel arch, as opposed to the one that you just saw with all those other spans. The wheel arches are one of the things that I always keep as one surface until the very end, because I want to use that arc to align and disalign things. Align things to it, and I don't want to be. It's a lot of times if it's different surfaces, you'll sort of shoot yourself in the foot. So try to keep the wheel arch just one single surface, and especially in the beginning. Another thing you'll notice is that I tend to basically move volumes around fairly loosely, and also not even use what I would say the best step, because I have an emphasis on speed versus if it's the right move. I see a lot of people, especially in the beginning of their career, it's almost like they get paralyzed, and they're sort of just stuck there thinking, okay, well, how can I solve this? What's the best move forward? And to me, I know that there's plenty of different paths and moves. So to me, whatever comes first to my head, I'll just start doing that, and then once I move all those surfaces, I'll see what's the if it was the correct choice, or what's the next step forward. But I'm always moving forward, and you have to sort of look at it like a clay sculptor. They're not gonna get the details and the perfection in the first hit. All they're doing is moving big slabs around and trying to find the form in space. And this is what I'm basically doing in this point of the process. The refinement will come later. Right now, I'm just trying to find the design in space. And that's really what my job is. And there's different tools and methods to sort of like speed up your workflow. For example, here with this surface, the front, what I do is I extend them and intersect them and then trim convert them to sort of to get a surface that's right in line with that. And this is real time, so you'll see real quick. I'll show you a replay on how quickly you could do this, because here I already pressed I for to get my intersect going, and then I touch both surfaces, extend it with an E, and then trim convert. So there I just did like about 3 actions in like less than 5 seconds, and that's one of the things why I always stress on people using hotkeys, because if you notice through my video actually that most of everything is, if I wouldn't tell you anything, you wouldn't see any buttons being pressed or anything because of my hotkeys. To me, it's all about steps and practice, and if you can minimize the time it takes to get from one step to the other, the more you can improve. So remember to, if something's taking you too long to find or click, put it into a hotkey if it's part of your workflow. The curve stretch tool is a really nice tool I use fairly often I'll usually duplicate an edge using my duplicate curve hotkey, and then I'll press the stretch tool to move it around. And with something as big as this, it's a little bit redundant in terms of the change. So I have to do a lot of like alignment and CV movement just to kind of get it back to something I wanted. But after this, you'll see that I do the same for the other side of it, and it makes a lot more sense. See, you could change like sort of the main pivot of it, and then realign it, do all that. And see, I always try to use curves that are already, or surfaces that are already around the design, to try to have everything sort of talk to each other, even if that curve wasn't exactly built in the same world. And then if you can see here, I'm trying to project align all of that, and my all my surfaces right now are still 1 degree. And project align is a great tool. See if here in my it's under the regular align tool, and then see I put the arrow that says right there project, and then down over there I have it under view. Um, um, so so wherever I'm looking at, and all the first thing you do is you click on the edge, and then you hit the guide surface, and then it aligns it to it. It also leaves a curve on surface in that place. So this is one of the tools I use all the time. And if you notice, it wasn't an exact perfect positional alignment, and that's okay because my guide surfaces are just there for help. I don't need my volumes to be exactly where they're at, because there's a bigger emphasis on keeping the volumes and the surfaces very very simple right now, as opposed to trying to get alignment everywhere. And also that's just the case too with anything that is going to have a secondary surface on top, a fillet or a transitional surface. Um, I always try to make them so that they're positional, but if I have to add more CVs or spans to get it positional when I know I'm gonna have a fillet on top later, then I don't bother. Here's another example on how hotkeys can make your workflow a lot quicker. Right now, I just hit N to duplicate that top curve, and then I moved it to the bottom. I'm projecting it right now. Trim convert, and then I delete the old surface, and then I delete the old curve. So if you see one more time, see that's duplicate. Then I move it to the bottom, change the view for the side. I'm trying to get the same line across both sides. Project, trim convert, and then I delete the stuff I used to make it happen. See, this is another just a quick way of how with hotkeys you can. It's sort of like muscle memory. It's like playing a chord or something. You know that what's the next thing that's coming up, and then you just kind of your brain is more occupied thinking of the model versus where the tool is at. And here now I'm just doing some simple curvature comb refinement. Um, Something that's very important in if you're gonna be a modeler, you just have to understand what these mean, and how you can move them around to get them to do what you want them to do. here I saw that there's in the top curve it bends the other way, and so I want a character closer to the bottom curve. That third other curve that you see, I don't even know why I clicked on it, but pay no mind. So so now I'm just sort of like analyzing it and seeing, okay, how am I gonna get them to look the same? And I'm have a fairly good understanding of all these of curvature combs and all that. So I think even though I know the math behind it, it's still very intuitive now. So just keep playing around with them, and then you'll see how they make sense. It's all about curvature, and it's basically a measurement of the radius. So then what I do is I move them a bit forward to get a bit more lead in, and then I realign the the volumes, or I mean the surfaces, which is basically the same thing. And then see, I get a little closer, and then this is more almost class A, and then the type of transition here is G3, which isn't really necessary for design modeling, honestly. But that's how I use curvature combs. So after this point, I'm gonna just leave everything at high speed, because most of what's going on here is just repetition of what I've been doing. Just because that's what it's supposed to be, you know. And so from here, I'll basically skip forward to points where I felt that there was some lessons to learn, and then this way you're not stuck with me here for 5 hours. So let's skip ahead. So here, as you can see, I start to in this hood line, I start to move away from the actual guide, and the reason why I wanted to stop here is because even though I use these guide surfaces, that's all they are. They're just guide surfaces. In Once you see something in 3D space, it's gonna be difficult to know if that line goes across the whole car. So don't get too hung up on, if you start using these sort of guide surfaces that I do. Don't get too hung up on making them law. Just be fluid with all your surfacing. You're just trying to find the volumes. No need in sort of straining yourself and putting these different rules that aren't really necessary. So remember, to me, it's all about knowing the rules and then breaking them, or not breaking them, but understanding them and understanding where you're breaking them and why you're breaking them. And I break them all the time, and especially in this Electra versus the other Electra. I made it a lot more. I didn't do any hype. I didn't do like hyper analysis and making sure every single line is talking to each other, because I sort of um, wanted them not to talk to each other, and I wanted them some to sort of have a bit of an S, and not exactly the most G3 transition between them, because every sort of there's a certain look to every style of modeling, and just because you can make it, let's say, quote unquote better in terms of the transition and the curvature comb analysis. If you see a bunch of the cars are out in the road now, um, especially a Japanese style like Toyota and Lexus, Honda, Nissan. They're breaking a lot of these like rules, and that gives them that certain look, and so just remember that I've been blessed in my career to be in a lot of different design studios. So what a certain type of surfacing or design solution, in one studio they'll praise you, and the other studio they'll be like, oh my god, that's so ridiculous. It's all very subjective in that side of it. So remember to try to stay fluid in what is correct and what isn't correct. To me, it's all about knowing the whole world and picture of it, and understanding that, and then after that, then the sky's the limit. and whatever you think is better or looks better, then that's sort of your style, and I got my own style, and that doesn't mean that it's a perfectly modeled style. And once you really start to see final production surfaces, you'll notice that a lot of the stuff that gets manufactured is very, sometimes they could be pretty, um, I don't want to say lazy surfacing, but it's just it's just not necessary for a lot of those projects. So just remember to first understand the rules, and then after that, modify them to for your own taste or for your client's taste or for whatever company you're working for. Um, but yeah, so after this video, well, in the end of this sort of speed through, I'm gonna show you guys the final, what ended up how I ended up finishing this, and as you can see here, I had some very weird solutions. Actually, I kind of like this one with like the eyes closed. Kind of gave it some sort of weird spaceshipy kind of look to it. But yeah, so remember to understand the rules and then break them. Okay, so here I decided to rebuild my fender again, even though we did all that work beforehand to try to get something to work there. And the reason I'm showing this is because one, to show you guys how I rebuild stuff with the square tool, and also another thing is to tell you guys, don't fall in love with any of your surfaces. They will leave you, like every woman in your. No, I'm joking. They will leave you, um, because you just have to rebuild them a lot, and sometimes you might go down this like rabbit hole where you thought it was a solution, and then all of a sudden, 4 hours in, you'll realize, oh shit, there was a better way to do it, and you just have to go through it. And the thing is though, that's the whole point of this whole process. Like you're not gonna hit it on the first try. So here I'm just trying to figure out how to do a clean surface after that main slab I put down. So what I'm doing is actually basically using a square tool to make it, and then here I change it to be the same. And then a lot of times in that the fourth curve, the one I'm moving right now, see, I keep it live, and then I adjust it to make sure that my CV layout is nice and pretty. Once I had the main volume down, I wanted to see how that volume related to the bottom volume. And as you can see here, the top volume is sort of going a little farther out. So what I'm gonna do is actually adjust my main volume so that, and use this sort of transitional surface as a way to guide me in terms of how they relate to each other. And then I'll start moving the CVs of the main slabs around to sort of make them talk to each other. And see, after a bit of adjustments, you see that we get a really nice clean transition between them. And I actually ended up redoing this whole section, and then I'll go over it in the end of the video. I'm gonna show them the finished hard edge models and analyze it a bit so you guys can see how this actually ended up after all this work. And then here, I'm just trying to figure out the opening, and every time I'm putting a strip of surface, sort of like these headlights right here, I always use the rail curve, and then I use that same edge as a way to sort of like move that surface around that opening. And here I kind of realized that that edge wasn't really, or how I did it wasn't really working out with that surface. So I actually ended up changing it so that I went the opposite way. So I knew that it didn't work from the top left, so I wanted to try it out from the bottom right. And because of that little intersection you see there, that's related to the hood. Um, so here I duplicate that curve, detach it, find that, rail it, and then now I have a surface there. And then I use that surface to build, to sort of run it down the line again using my rail tool. And then depending on what surface is on, usually if it's a really clean surface I made, I will use the natural option, or if it's a bit wobbly, I'll go parallel. But the point is that I built those whole curves um, based on each other, and that makes all those transitions a lot cleaner and a lot better looking. But yeah, I use that all the time. You know, railing, especially if you when you see any of my lights or the sides of my body panels and stuff, it's always a rail across. And then here, I don't know if you noticed back there, I planarized the surface, you know, to sort of eliminate some of that roundness. And now here I'm just getting a curve, projecting, and then trim converting it, um, deleting the other one. And yeah, and so this is kind of how I started sort of carving in the cavity of the headlight while still using all the surfaces around it. So to sort of finish off this video, I'm gonna show you guys how I did the back end of that fender. So I got the inside shoulder, that surface, and I duplicated that edge, and then now I'm just connecting a curve between the main curve of the fender and this new curve based off the shoulder, and then I'm just connecting it. And I'm just keeping it straight right now because I'm gonna use the actual curve tool as a way to guide me of how that curve should be, and also a way to move around the CVs of the main slab, so that it talks more with that sort of surface that I wanted to, where I wanted to go. So so here I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way to make all these CVs line up. And right now this is where I basically snap all the CVs to the actual square, and then I start moving them around. This gives me more control over the final square. And now I'm moving the CVs in the main slab to make sure that you know they're transitioning into this volume. All just CV massaging. Which to me, this is how I really refine my actual transitions and all that. You know, once we get past this step, and into the very um, you know, the part where we really start to refine all the once we figure out the volumes, we refine them, and that's when a lot of CV massaging comes through. And but as long as the base is still correct, you know, in terms of you follow the right rules, no twisting or, you know, control twisting, and everything's edge to edge, the rest is fairly easy. So after this, I'll just start. I'll show you guys how I finished and talk a bit about the timing and all that. So stay tuned. Okay, so and then 2 weeks later, I got to this model. Well, honestly, technically, it's more like a week of work because I only worked on this in my afternoons. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of the solutions that ended up in the final model. Well, not final, but you know, in this stage. So yeah, as you can see, everything is still very simple, very clean. There's curvature everywhere. There's curvature everywhere. And this is my tolerances are pretty high up. I use CATIA V5, just because you're supposed to once you're a professional. You know, you don't want your client to have higher tolerances than you. But also, like if you see here, this is actually aligned to this slab, and then this gives it a really nice transition, and then this break pops up, and and then over here I even cleaned it with this surface. So now there's a nice clean surface going across it that's aligned to this, and And yeah, this the hood, you know, very refined. We have a little opening here, and then in the back, I made it so that there's like basically this wing that sort of like pops up or pops out of the surface and then back in, and then in the top there's this cool little cage. If I hide this, I think you'll see the. Oh, not in this one, but I'll show you guys the next video. Ah, there you go. So what else? Yeah, so as you can see, everything is still, you know, edge to edge, very clean. Not there isn't really any except for this main slab. You know, I'm pretty sure all of these surfaces are all, um, you know, 5 or 3 degrees or less. Basically, I just, you know, I always try to keep everything, you know, I'll try to keep the whole car moving in at the same time. So, you know, it's not good to sort of like get stuck on the front end, and then all of a sudden you have a full refined front end, and then your back is like not even touched. So remember to sort of, before you start with your transitional surfaces, remember to get your whole car to the same quality. And yeah, let me show you guys a little bit more about like even this. See, it's all very simple. And even though this looks very blocked up, let me show you guys um, the what happens after this. In my next video, which I also, you know, well, I've been recording, is the how I do the transitional surfaces. And those videos are more technical, and I think there's more lessons to be learned in that one. But let me open up the file. So this is actually you know, this is basically like I've said before, this is basically the same thing as the hard edge model, except now with transitions. And since everything is so lined up with itself, and so they're talking to each other, you know, once you add the transitions, it really starts to sort of like, that's where the magic happens. And even then, adding the transitions is just maybe like another week of work, maybe. You know, if everything's set up properly, it's pretty easy. So my next video will be a bit on my transitional surfaces, how I did this, how all this stuff. Oh look, there's a couple spans there. Another thing I wanted to say too is, in my last video, you know, I was saying things about like you know, you don't need all these spans and all that, but I use spans too. You know, it depends on the client, but the thing is, before, back in the day, uh, you had to be very much 5 degree and 3 degree, because a lot of the softwares and the milling softwares, they couldn't understand anything after that. But nowadays, you can have a million spans everywhere, and it doesn't really matter. Production surfaces have millions and millions of spans. Well, not millions, but what I meant by that is you know, don't cheat by using, if something needs a million spans, it usually means that something was wrong with the structure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong at all. You know, in the end, it's all about highlight control. You know, if I turn on my zebra stripes, you know, it's all about highlights and how they're, you know, how they're transitioning into each other. And This is actually one of the areas that came out very, very clean. Over here in the side of the fender. So yeah, my next video will be about the transitional surfaces, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you have any questions, put them in the comment. The other thing I really want to teach you guys is I'm self-taught, and my first teacher was these help documents, and it's actually, to me, it's quite amazing that people who call, like, send me emails and they send me emails about all these questions, and a lot of their answers are right here. And when I was learning, there wasn't YouTube videos, there wasn't anything. I went through this, and I went through every single page, and I learned, because I knew the more I learned, the better I'll be, and the more likely I could make money. So a lot of times, I remember one time I was teaching, and when I said this, like, the students were like, "Oh my God, please!" Like, it's almost like they were like, "Oh, we pay you for that," and it's like that type of mentality was, it's so stupid to me, because I've done this for multiple softwares. I do stuff for Grasshopper, for Polygon modeling, and it's just crazy to me that if you can't figure something out, a lot of people, they don't have anybody to ask questions. They sort of just give up when all the answers are most of at least you could start sort of finding the answers through the help documents. So that's also a way to do it. That's why I always hate when people email me and they're basic, "Oh, well, how did I do that?" And I'm like, "My man, like, you shouldn't ask me the difficult questions. Don't ask me where the projected line is." And that's just more just as a sort of like self-help. You got to be more reliant than a teacher, because a lot of times I've seen these teachers and they're just not that good. So you sort of have to go on, you have to sort of go out of your way to find the correct information, and that usually means going through these documents. But anyways, in the next video we'll go through the transitions. So yeah, I hope you guys had fun, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.